Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Are you looking for hope and inspiration? Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage and spend some time with us as we meet role models throughout church history and discuss how they can help us in our daily pilgrimage of life.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Socials with the Saints. Our mission is to inspire you in your daily pilgrimage of life by introducing you to the communion of saints. I am Jason Nunez, Media Production Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope, a Catholic ministry founded in 1993. Our mission is to provide events, experiences, and media, initiating a desire in people to encounter Jesus Christ in their daily journey of life. Socials with the Saints are opportunities to learn from role models of faith and from one another, for fellowship, prayer, and receiving spiritual tools. Today, we will be shining a light on the Vietnamese Cardinal who gave hope to people even from his prison cell, Venerable Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn. We are recording this podcast as a resource for those of you who could not attend our in-person Social with the Saints gathering. You are most welcome to join us on the third Thursday of every month in San Antonio, Texas. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org for more information about our in-person Social with the Saints gatherings. Have you ever heard of Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn? Well, let's discover his story together. Venerable Nguyễn Văn, Cardinal and prisoner, was born on April 17, 1928, and he passed away on September 22, 2002. He is buried in Santa Maria della Scala in Rome, Italy. He was ordained on June 11, 1953. If you see an image of Venerable Nguyễn Văn, you will notice that he is wearing a pectoral cross. Now, this is a cross he wore until his death, and it was one that was made with two small pieces of wood when he was in jail. He protected the cross by hiding it into a piece of soap so that his jailers would not confiscate it. When he was freed, he covered the wooden cross with the coat of metal. His patronage is of prisoners' obedience, trust, and perseverance. Now, Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn was born on April 17, 1928, near Hue, the former capital of Annam. His father and mother's families were not of the same social status. Businessmen and merchants on his father's side, higher-ranking mandarins on his mother's side. But for generations, members of both families had distinguished themselves for their Catholic faith and love of country. Many had been martyred. For more than 2 centuries, in fact, between 1644 and 1888, waves of violent persecutions had martyred about 150,000. These memories remained vivid in both families, sustaining their faith. Tuan was particularly proud of his mother's family. No Dinh Khan, his mother's father, had been one of the few Catholics to hold an important post in the imperial court in Vietnam. He had 6 sons and 3 daughters, to whom he passed on his life's passion. Quote, "God desires Vietnam's independence." End of quote. His daughter, Hiep Elizabeth, born in 1903, who would become Tuan's mother, helped keep the No Dinh family united in faith and in their desire to help Vietnam achieve independence. In 1955, Diem, Khan's 3rd son, would become the president of the new Republic of Vietnam. Now, Nguyễn Văn Nam and Hiep, his wife, married in 1924, had already been tried by the illness and death of their eldest son, Xuan. Hiep named her 2nd son, who would be followed by 7 other children, Tuan, which means will of God. Tuan had a happy childhood. At the age of 13, Tuan had asked his parents for permission to continue his studies at the minor seminary in An Ninh, where his uncle Tuc had become a priest and then a bishop and had been trained. At An Ninh, a center of Catholic resistance against persecution, the portrait of No Dinh Khan was displayed with reverence. The seminary was run by the fathers of the foreign missions of Paris, whose numbers included several Vietnamese priests. These professors sowed in Tuan's soul the seeds of true devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary and gave him sure teachers, the Cure of Ars, Saint Teresa of Lisieux, and Francis-Xavier, his patron saint. Now, in World War II, France's defeat and Japan's temporary victory all came unexpectedly. Tuan's was more intense in reading the lives of the saints, particularly that of Théophane Vénard, and praying the rosary. Every morning, he went to Mass and received communion. In March 1945, Japan took control of Vietnam. Several days before this sudden show of force, the residents of Hue saw red flags waving throughout the city, the first sign of the Communist Liberation Front. No Din Khoi, the eldest of Tuan's uncles and a declared enemy of the Communists, was arrested on August 31st and executed by them a few weeks later with his only son as a traitor to his country. Tuan was overcome with fury. Forgiveness seemed impossible to him. He felt the same anguish again in 1963-64, when killings and executions annihilated his family, and again in 1975, at the beginning of his imprisonment. Learning to master his anger would be a long and difficult process for him. In contemplating the example of Jesus Christ, he understood that loving those who committed cruel offenses against him is not optional, yet his heart remained closed to all forgiveness. Providence then brought to his attention the example of Father Pro, a Mexican Jesuit who was arrested and executed in 1927 by his country's communist government, and who died forgiving his executioners. In the fall of 1947, Tuan entered the major seminary in Phu Xuan. He fed himself on St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica, as well as Father Garrigou Lagrange's masterpiece, The Three Ages of the Interior Life. At this time, he also came to know the Imitation of Christ and the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, works to which he would remain devoted for the rest of his life. On June 11, 1953, Tuan was ordained a priest by Bishop Urrutia in Hue. 3 months later, he was diagnosed with advanced tuberculosis. He was rushed to the main hospital in Hue. At their son's bedside, Tuan's parents spent hours praying the rosary with him. Transferred to Saigon, he was admitted to the French military hospital in April 1954. The doctors decided to remove his lung. The morning scheduled for the operation, during the last X-ray before administering general anesthesia, amazement. No traces of tuberculosis. It's a miracle, Tuan joyously exclaimed. 4 days later, in perfect health, he returned to Hue. At the same time, the radio announced the fall of Dien Bien Phu. In July, in spite of protest by the new government's leader, No Din Diem, the Geneva Accords were signed, and the country was divided in two. The Communists controlled the North, and in October 1955, the South was declared a republic, with Diem as its first president. Almost 1 million North Vietnamese, many of them Catholic, fled to the South. It was at this time that Tuan's bishop sent him to Rome, where he spent 4 years studying at the College for the Propagation of the Faith. During his vacations, he traveled throughout Europe. In August 1957, in front of the grotto in Lourdes, he whispered, not entirely aware of what he was saying, quote, "In the name of your Son, and in your name, Mary, I accept any trials or suffering." End of quote. He returned to Vietnam in 1959. The following year, John the 23rd established a Vietnamese ecclesial hierarchy. At the same time, the faculty board elected Tuan as the head of the minor seminary. 3 years later, on November 1st, 1963, a group of generals launched a coup. Diem refused to use the presidential guard and tried to negotiate. It was a failure. The next day, November 2nd, on his way to Mass and confession, he was assassinated with his brother, Nu. 6 months later, Khan, Diem's brother, fell into the hands of rebel generals. He was executed on May 8, 1964. Tuan was living a nightmare. 4 uncles murdered, 2 others in exile, his parents' health ruined, Vietnam's independence in danger. But Providence came to his assistance. He was named Vicar General, a responsibility that took his mind off his troubles. In April 1967, Pope Paul VI named him Bishop of Nha Trang, Located on the coast, about 250 miles from Saigon, the Diocese of Nha Trang numbered 1,160,000 inhabitants at the same time, among whom were 130,000 Catholics. Thuan was consecrated a bishop in Hue on June 24th. In 1968, during the Viet Cong's Tet Offensive, it became apparent that the communists might gain control of South Vietnam despite the American presence. Bishop Thuan decided to set up, in addition to the formation of lay parishioners, pastoral care for vocations. In the span of 8 years, the number of major seminarians in his diocese went from 42 to 147. The number of minor seminarians rose from 200 to 500. Now, in April 1975, the bishop ordained the last large class of seminarians, shortly before the communists took control of Nha Trang. The diocese was strong enough to deal with the restrictions. One by one, the Viet Cong occupied the most important cities. Thousands of people headed south, with their sick and elderly. Bishop Thuan chartered planes to parachute tons of medicine and food to those needy refugees. In doing so, he attracted the communists' hostility. He knew it, but he was doing his duty as a bishop. On April 23rd, he learned that Pope Paul VI had named him the Archbishop of Saigon's coadjudicator, which is an auxiliary with right to succession. Without dwelling on the dramatic consequences this decision would have for him, Bishop Thuan set off for the South Capital at the beginning of May. On August 13th, Bishop Thuan received an order to present himself to the former presidential palace, where he was pressed to confess that he was an agent of the Vatican conspiracy. When he admitted nothing, he was put in a car and was taken by night to a village near Nha Trang. There, he was placed under house arrest in the home of the parish priest and forbidden to communicate with anyone under threat of retaliation against the diocese. Soon, his inability to act for God and for souls began to make his bishop's heart suffer. Reflecting on St. Paul's captivity in Rome, he decided to write letters to the faithful. Thus was born The Road of Hope. Printed anonymously, the work soon found its way into the hands of many faithful, even in France and the United States. Infuriated, the authorities transferred Bishop Thuan to the camp in Pho Con on March 19, 1976, the feast of St. Joseph. He was locked in a tiny windowless cell filled with mold and fungus because of the dampness. There he stayed 9 months without ever coming out, without meeting any fellow prisoners. Bit by bit, isolation did its work. Quote, "Many confused feelings swarm in my head," he would rather write. "Sadness, fear, nervous tension. My heart was broken by the separation from my people. I was unable to sleep, tormented by the thought of all the works I had taken on for God, going to ruin, and my being rebelled against it. One night, a voice said to me, in the depth of my heart, 'Why are you tormenting yourself like this? You must distinguish between God and God's works. Everything you have undertaken and that you want to continue to do is excellent. These are God's works, but they aren't God. If God wants you to abandon all that, do it right away and put your trust in Him. He will do things infinitely better than you. You have chosen God alone and not His works.' This light brought me a new peace, which helped me overcome moments that were physically almost unbearable." End of quote. On November 29, 1976, he was taken to a work camp in the mountains of North Vietnam. There, he managed to have a Christian send him a little wine, disguised as a, quote, "remedy for stomachs," end of quote, and a few small fragments of bread hidden in a flashlight. He kept all this in a cardboard box. That box became his own private altar. Every day at 3 p.m., the hour of Christ's death, he would place drops of wine into the palm of his hand, mingled it with water to celebrate Mass. He began celebrating Mass in secret. From then on, he continually experienced Christian joy. He gave communion to Catholics in prison with him. Through his openness and kindness, he gained accomplices even amongst the guards. As a result, he was transferred to a stricter prison close to Hanoi. Through a security guard, he learned that John Paul II received a request from the bishops of Vietnam for their country's martyrs to be canonized. This development made his release impossible, which had been foreseen at one time. Van Thuan was finally released on November 21, 1988, and being allowed to visit Rome, was barred from ever returning to Vietnam. Consequently, he spent the rest of his life in Rome and died on September 16, 2002. His cause for canonization was initiated on October 22, 2010, and is continuing to progress with the declaration of his heroic virtues. The decree of Pope Francis said about Van Thuan was this, quote, "This witness of faith, hope, and charity of the servant of God, given generously day after day with humility and discretion, is a constant invitation to collective holiness, which finds its greatest expression in fidelity to God and his reciprocal help to travel the way of holiness." End of quote. During those 13 years, I became aware of all my weakness, physical as well as mental. There were moments when I could not concentrate at all, when I could not even pray. Jesus then sent me a light. I must live the testament of Christ. In his testament just before dying, Jesus left me his word, his body, his mother, his church, his priesthood, his new day. I repeat to myself, I must live the testament of Christ. It's simple, it's inexhaustible. I would try to explain how I receive the strength of God's liberating power by citing 10 rules. The 10 rules are as follow. Number 1, I will live the present moment to the fullest. Number 2, I will discern between God and God's works. Number 3, I will hold firmly to one secret, prayer. Number 4, I will see in the Holy Eucharist my only power. Number 5, I will have only one wisdom, the science of the cross. Number 6, I will remain faithful to my mission in the church and for the church as witness of Jesus Christ. Number 7, I will seek the peace the world cannot give. Number 8, I will carry out a revolution by renewal in the Holy Spirit. Number 9, I will speak one language and wear one uniform, charity. Number 10, I will have one very special love, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Now, in a situation of seemingly utter hopelessness, the fact that Cardinal Nguyễn Văn Thuận could listen and speak to God became for him an increasing power of hope, which enabled him, after his release, to become for people all over the world a witness of hope. Now, these are the words of Venerable Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn. Quote, "When no one listens to me anymore, God still listens to me. When I can no longer talk to anyone or call upon anyone, I can always talk to God." End of quote. What an amazing story and example that we have this month in Venerable Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn. Now, here are a few questions for you to ponder. What struck you about what you just heard? What stood out to you in the story? How does the life of this role model of faith teach and challenge you in your spiritual life? What lessons will you take with you into your daily life? We ask you to kindly leave a comment on the YouTube post that corresponds with this episode or the podcast app that you're listening on. Or you can also send us an email, and we'd love to hear what you think about the life and example of Venerable Cardinal Nguyễn Văn Thuận. You can send us an email to ministry@pilgrimcenterofhope.org. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. You can download a printable pamphlet with this story, as well as a same card with an image of Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn Thuận, along with a quote, on our website at pilgrimcenterofhope.org. The link will be included in the podcast description. The quote selected is, "We must live each day, each minute of our life, as though it is the last." Venerable Cardinal Francis-Xavier Nguyễn Văn Thuận, pray for us. We would like to give a big thank you to this month's sponsor, Monica Cassidy, for making this podcast episode possible, and we thank you for joining us on Socials with the Saints. We invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of pilgrimages, conferences, and outreach. Visit pilgrimcenterofhope.org. That's pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or call us at 210-521-3377. Please make sure to stay up to date with details of our wonderful events, and you can do so again on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or you can also like our Facebook page or our Instagram page, and you can also subscribe to our email newsletter by going to our website. Until next time, friends, remember, we are a pilgrim people, and on our journey, we are never alone in the communion of saints. May God bless you.